This session is called Reinventing the Wheel, Neurotech Startups Outsource Key Components. And we have three very qualified panelists on this session, plus me, who's not so qualified. And we're going to hear from each of them who will tell us a little bit about their firm, their capabilities, and then we'll have a discussion as to what are some of the considerations if you're a neurotech startup, the trade-offs and pros and cons. So our first panelist is Andy Kelly, and he's with Surtech Medical. And I've asked him to give us a little background on the capabilities that Surtech has to offer. So Andy, you want to come up?
We're good. Yeah, so I'm Andy Kelly. I'm the Director of Applications Engineering for Surtech Medical. And today I'm going to make a little pitch for a platform development strategy for your implantable device, neuromod or otherwise, a little higher. Yep. So no news to this audience. There are tons of neuromodulation applications. I made this slide actually several years ago, and the list has probably doubled since then. There are tons of things going on. We're at the tip of the iceberg. Lots of different parts of the body, lots of different therapies, all in neuromodulation. So that's kind of why we're here. But there's some pretty serious challenges getting these to commercialized. Basically, it all comes down to what the topic has been almost all week: time, money, and risk. Right? You're getting into a pretty long haul, a lot of money, and a lot of uncertainty about the outcome. So we're going to try and help with that project, with that problem. A proof of concept approach is one strategy to help get there. So you can make some trade-offs of the optimization of your device in favor of schedule, cost, and risk. But even a proof of concept is a pretty big deal, right? So in general, if you want a good proof of concept device, it needs to have the same therapy as your final product. And ideally, it's in a similar form factor. So in other words, something like the cans on the left, not the circuit boards on the right. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And so that leaves us with the dilemma that a lot of us all face, and that is you essentially need funding, a decent amount of funding to make a good proof of concept device, and you need that good proof of concept device to get your funding. Right. So a little bit of chicken and egg. So what can you do about it? And so the idea here is a platform development strategy. It's taking that compromise approach a step further, where now we trade off the optimization for reduced cost, schedule, and risk. But we're doing so by using standard or semi-custom or semi-standard components, right? So it's things that have been designed, known good components done before you started, can get you to the finish line much faster. And obviously, since these were designed before your needs came to light, they can't be a perfect optimization for you, but the idea is it's a good compromise and a close enough fit. So that's what we're trying to do here. At Surtech, we have a Simplify neuromodulation platform, and you can kind of see, I'll show you with the pointer, but basically we've got platforms with an IPG, a variety of leads, external chargers, external devices, all of the peripherals, all of the external everything, and a couple complete systems to be used as your starting point. The first of the two that we have is called Excel. This product here is a completely designed and done device, leads, everything system. It has not yet been commercialized. So this one is really poised well for customization. So in other words, don't take this as is, but maybe it's a nice platform to make your handful of modifications, semi-optimize it to your device, get to the finish line a lot faster. The other one's even better. This is from a recent acquisition. We call it XL Plus, and this is a complete system, absolutely done, fully commercialized. And we offer the right of reference for the PMAs and DHFs for anybody who wants to use it. So if you're thinking about a new therapy, a new startup, a new device, new anything, if the features of this device can meet your needs, you can basically be done. So pretty awesome if it fits your needs. Digging a little deeper down into what my role is we have some application specific standard product ICs. So these are ASICs, but basically they're ASICs instead of for one specific customer, they're ASICs that we make available for the whole market. There's a variety of neurostim ICs, different sizes, different electrode counts, different amplitudes, just, different flavors. Don't need to get into too many details there. We've got a power management IC. They come with their development kits to help develop and expedite your development. And then kind of why I'm here today is our latest news is a new addition is our 4-channel NeuroSense IC. So all the other ones were power management and STEM. Now we've got a Sense IC. This chip here, as you can see, it's got 4 identical independent differential sense channels. It's based on a patented pseudo-random chopper amplifier. So that's a patent we own at Surtech, and that's the core of the design. And that approach has enabled us to get some really low input reformed noise numbers at good power budgets and decent size. So we think it may be the best in the industry for that sliver of needs. It's definitely targeted more towards really low frequency, really small signals. So like ECOGs, not so much action potentials, but it can work over a decent spectrum. I think given time, we won't get into the details. That's just a picture of the chopper. And I can tell you a little bit if anybody's interested after about why the chopper works, how it works, and what's cool about it. But I'll pass that for now. And then similarly, there's the specs. And again, the key numbers are the current consumption and the noise. So the closed loop chopper with the pseudo random can get us really low noise at a really low power budget. And that's kind of the deal there. With that now, we at Surtech, we can offer really nice head start to making any closed loop neuromodulation system, right? So we've got our Sense chip, we've got our STIM chips. All the blue items are readily available as standard products. So you can use basically everything that's either off the shelf or from Surtech and build up a fully closed loop neuromodulation system pretty fast, pretty efficiently, and pretty inexpensively. So I think I will leave it at that and we'll take the questions later. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy. And our next presenter is Hannah Claridge, and she's from a British company called TPP, the technology, TTP, sorry. I always get that mixed up. Get my T's and P's. The Technology Partnership Limited from the UK. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her firm as soon as I find her slides, which are right here. No, that's not it. That one is. Yay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Oops.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Hannah Claridge. I lead the neurotechnology team at TTP. So TTP stands for the Technology Partnership, very helpful name, very memorable, I know, TTP. But we are a technology and product development company. So we really exist to help other companies get their products to market faster. And we specialize in developing complex hardware devices, mostly for the medical market. And we try to bridge that gap between the preclinical research and the commercialization. So to give a quick overview of the company, we've been around for about 35 years now. We've built up a lot of experience over those years across a range of different market areas. We have about 300 scientists and engineers at our disposal within the companies, each of whom are an expert in their particular field. So that really ranges from a lot of different engineering disciplines, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, through to science, so physics, biochemistry, optics, and also on the kind of human factors, user-centered design side as well. And we work on a consulting basis. So what that means is that we put together custom teams for each project, pulling on the expertise that's needed for the particular project that we're working on. And the goal really is to fill gaps in our clients' companies. So we can add expertise that complements the expertise that you guys already have in-house in order to accelerate that product development process, and so that you don't necessarily need to hire every different skill set that you need during that entire product development process. So we've been in the space, as I said, for over 30 years, a lot of work in the medical industry, a couple of different examples here of some of the products that we've helped get to market, ranging from rapid diagnostics through to digital health, drug delivery, wearable biosensing. And you can see on the right some of the areas where we get involved. So really trying to take things from early opportunity discovery stages through to the detailed engineering that goes into these devices, and then identifying suitable CMOs like some of the other people we're hearing from on this panel, and facilitating that transfer to manufacture to whichever company is most appropriate for the long term. Now, what are we doing in neuromodulation? So we have a dedicated team that works in the neuromodulation space. So this is a real growing area for us that we're doing an increasing amount of work in. And here are some of the capabilities that we have in this space and ways that we can support our clients. So I'll just pick out a couple of points here. Happy to take questions later. So some of the work that we do is around the kind of tight integration between the electronics and the mechanical aspects of IPGs. I don't need to tell you guys about some of the trends in that industry towards miniaturization, reducing power consumption, but also asking for the devices to do more and more as we're moving towards closed loop therapies. We've done a lot of work on wireless power transfer and wireless communication. The right solution depends on what it is that you're trying to do and the different form factors, the different locations. But we can do both kind of integrating off-the-shelf components or developing more custom systems there as well. And as I mentioned, human factors is one of the other areas that we're very strong in. So really making sure that when we're designing these devices, whether they're implantable or whether they're wearable, that they meet the needs of all of the users, both the end users, the patients that we're designing these things for, but also for the clinicians who are implanting these devices and other users along the way. So really what we can do at TTP is we can combine science, engineering, and user-centered design in order to add to your existing teams to help with that product development journey in order to help you guys get products out on the market faster. And by working with a partner like us, one of the kind of differences is that we allow our clients to keep all of the IP that's developed during this program so that they are then free to work with whichever long-term CMO is appropriate for them. So with that, I will stop and I guess we'll take questions during the panel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hannah, do you want to join us at the panelist table? Because we're going to grill you later with questions. Okay, our third panelist, Peter Penham from Microsystems Technologies.
Jim, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for staying late. Appreciate it. We're getting close to the end, but it's been an incredible program the last 2 days. I'd like to thank and congratulate Jim and JoJo and Jeremy and all of the team for just yet again. This is probably the best conference I've attended for the last 12 or 15 years. So, get to meet so many interesting people and really network and work together. So our panel this afternoon is really about hardware. We've talked a lot about clinical and reimbursement and a lot of different things. So we're way down on the value chain to some degree of just the hardware, but we're all here as sponsors and participants as part of this, what I call the active implant medical device ecosystem of service providers and manufacturing partners. And so I'm looking forward to kind of an interesting debate about, a turnkey platform to get into the clinic quickly versus a longer term, maybe customization of mix and match. My background is electrical engineering. I've been in semiconductors and microelectronics my whole career, involved with the active implant medical device space for probably over 15 years. So.
There you go.
Yeah. So just quickly, background about our company. Microsystems Technology is a group of 5 companies that specialize in different components and manufacturing services for active implant medical devices. We're actually been in business for almost 50 years, headquartered in Europe. Most of our manufacturing is in Europe, Switzerland and Germany. We have one facility here in the US in Portland, Oregon, where we do the electronic manufacturing services, where we actually build the electronics that would go into an IPG or an implant. So altogether, we're about 1,100 employees. And as I say, our heritage is all of the key components that go into an implant. So everything from primary cell batteries to chip packaging, flexible printed circuit boards, the electronic assembly. And we've worked with a number of companies, startups that have been on Jim's promising new startups and product of the year companies, helping them get to market and scale up their volume production for their product. So this was just meant to be sort of a talking points of sort of the comparison of, as we say, what E&E and the folks at IRS have is an off-the-shelf platform that pretty much you could take right into the clinic immediately. And then the difference would be the alternative of kind of putting together the custom components and subsystems for what would ultimately be something that could scale up in volume production. We'll touch on it, the 3 different power sources being a primary cell battery that is just implanted and you never have to recharge if your circuit design is really low power. And depending on the amount of therapy that's delivered. What we're seeing now, rechargeable has been around for a long time, depends on the use case and the application. But what's really interesting is this wireless power transfer where you're wearing the battery rather than implanting it inside the body. So as we're driving towards miniaturization, trying to put the therapy as close to the point of where the mechanism of action would be, having the power source external should be interesting. So really the trade-off is, can you use something off the shelf, but programmable and configurable? And again, that really does hasten the time to market. And then over the longer term, if you're trying to put something together that can't be served by one of these off-the-shelf platforms, then it is going to take a little bit longer to get a full custom optimized device. But hopefully by using the some of the proven components that come from the pacemaker world and other neurostim products that are FDA approved and commercially available, you can build on that foundation. So I think that's everything I had to say. I look forward to a good discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I prepared some questions for our panel of distinguished experts, and then we'll open it up after that to questions from the audience. So my first question for each of you is, what are the biggest risks to a neurotech startup when they're trying to make a decision whether to undertake engineering in-house or whether to seek outside help? Andy, do you want to start? Should be.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I think the biggest risk is probably that if you're a startup company, you've never done it before, right? And it's just that simple. That, if you go to a contract manufacturer that's done 10, 20, 30 similar projects before, we're all way up the learning curve. And so trying to do that on your own for the very first time, you'll get there, but it might not be pretty. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple other ones that I would add to that. One is the other challenge with when you're a new startup and you're trying to get some of these things done. So much of our ecosystem depends on other pieces, other suppliers, other vendors and everything. And especially when it comes to the semiconductor place, you're dealing with companies that are used to very high volume very large scale production and you're coming in with very low volumes, very high, I call it high maintenance, low volume request, you might not get any response. And if you do get a response, you're not a high priority customer.
Yeah.
So one of the arguments of these kinds of companies like ourselves is we pool. And so we're doing 30 or 40 projects. Now we've got a little bit of clout and now we get their attention, that sort of thing. I would leave it at that.
Good comments. Hannah, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those points, and also add, I think recruitment is a real challenge. So as you said, these are often things that you haven't done before, and therefore getting the right balance of skill sets that you need is a challenge. Some of those skill sets you might need for the long term, and it's a matter of, there aren't that many people around who have done these things before, and persuading those people, finding those people, persuading those to join the companies is challenging. And then you add to that the kind of multidisciplinary nature of some of these. There are some skill sets that you really critically need for a short space of time. And again, that's quite a challenge from a recruitment perspective and bringing those skills in. So I think, being able to draw on other companies who have these people who have done these things before available at whatever kind of bandwidth you need. So, we can start and stop, we can pause, we can ramp up the effort, ramp down the effort, we can vary how many people we put on a program at a given time.
Okay. And Peter, do you have anything to add?
Just kind of to repeat, and your title is exactly it. Why reinvent the wheel each time? So there's so many lessons learned in our companies and the rest of this ecosystem where we've tried a lot of things and learned which ones work better and which don't. So I think that's the risk of if you're trying to do it all yourself. Now, some of the thinking is, well, I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing, so I'm going to keep it all inside and hidden. That's one of the trade-offs. I mean, you're going to have to disclose some of your therapy and business plan at some point. And everything else.
My next question, again, for each of you, schedule time to market is very important for any type of startup. And there's milestones involved in a lot of cases with getting funding, with getting approval, et cetera. So what are the potential milestone and timeline advantages of working with an outside firm? Andy?
This order again?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned a little earlier, the home run is if one of these fully commercialized, fully completed systems happens to be close enough, then it's obvious, huge. The next step is you start with another platform that's not quite done, but it's, let's say, 70% done, 60% done. So obvious savings on those platforms, even if you're doing full custom, which actually most of our business is full custom, right? We're pitching, the platform approach, but most of our business is full custom, but you're still benefiting, and it's essentially almost the same answer as the last, is you're benefiting from quality systems that are already done and in place, a team that's already done and in place and have a bunch of successes under their belt. I was going to say, all the pitfalls and the roadblocks. You don't know them all, many of them, and you can avoid a lot of the traps that cause problems. Sometimes it's even just the maturity of the project management. Right. So having all the, multidisciplinary functions all working efficiently as a team, so you don't hurry up and then wait for the next step. So it all kind of essentially boils down to we've done it a lot before. And so you can benefit from that.
Great. Hannah, can you cite any specific examples? I don't want you to reveal any secrets from your clients, but any specific examples of how some of the firms that you've worked with have been able to shave months or maybe even a year or more off of their commercialization timeline?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say that if off the shelf is good enough for what you need, go for it. And that is equally true for platforms, for devices that exist already that are on the market. So, Medtronic IPGs, if that works for you, if you can take existing devices or some of the kind of platform technologies that are around, do it. especially in those earlier stages where you're de-risking the thing that you're adding, whether that's a new therapy paradigm, whether that's a new type of leads that you're developing, whatever that novelty is, whatever it takes to demonstrate that. Do it. And often, maybe that's just components that you then need to build yourself an IPG that contains components that are off the shelf, but do as much off the shelf as you can, because it will speed things up. I think where we can then help is when there are things that need to be customized, that need to be done, that are specific to your type of therapy. Maybe you need a higher channel count. Maybe you want to put the implant in a different location compared to devices that exist already. Maybe you want to make changes to the surgical procedure. You want some new surgical tools that also enable that. Those are the kind of areas where we can help. And I guess it's difficult to kind of say how much time we've shaved off, because there's no comparison, if you like. But we've certainly, there have been some cases where we've done late stage troubleshooting where we've essentially had to go back and redesign devices because because our clients have tried to take either an in-house route or a quick route or a cheap route, and it hasn't worked out for them. And being able to kind of have a multidisciplinary team where, to your point around project management, where you've got all of that knowledge in one place and you can actually pull together those interfaces, those different strands in one place so that you can then make that whole system work. I think that's something that that we can help with and that we've seen struggles with in the past.
Great. And Peter, anything you want to add?
Well, I guess a couple of points. Also, this interdisciplinary team, but also the quality management systems. You need to have that all well established in 13485 and all the regulatory standards. If you do that right up front as part of your development process, your regulatory approval of the device itself, it's going to benefit dramatically. And the same way, the more you can reuse approved components or materials, there's less of a regulatory burden if it's already been used on 5 other devices. So there should be less part of the submission to do that. So
okay, great. Next question, and we'll reverse the order, Peter. So we'll start with you. When you're a neurotech startup, you're talking to potential investors, or maybe you've already got the funding. How important is the role that VCs themselves can play in the decision to outsource? Do you find them as an asset, an ally, or do you find them as a neutral? Do you try to look for relationships with venture capital professionals because if they're occupying a board seat, for instance, there can have a lot of influence on decisions like that. So I'm just curious from each of you, what role you think the VCs play in this decision and how your firm might facilitate that.
I guess a couple of ways. The VC is going to help drive a lot of the resource allocation, or where's the money going to get spent for a startup. So, and they do have a lot of past experience. If you look at Trio, like yesterday, Dr. James explaining that they've had success with multiple neurotech startups for different therapies, but sort of similar hardware platforms. So, I think they can help the entrepreneurs and their team understand how to allocate between just the core R&D, but also, the clinical and then the regulatory and the reimbursement and all of that. There's
so from your experience, VCs have been more of an ally than a detriment to.
I think so. And again, talking about coming to this conference, it's great because we get to talk to VCs, hear what's coming up, and demonstrate why we're a good potential manufacturing partner.
Yeah, and if I can just interject an anecdote, we had as our keynote speaker Frank Fisher, who was the founder of NeuroPace, and he shared some of his stories. Probably one of the longest serving pre-approval implanted neurotech device companies, and she shared some horror stories about the regulatory process and dealing with the FDA. But he also shared some stories about the decision. They made a decision early on to keep engineering in-house. And he gave the reasons for that, but he also explained that it added years to his commercialization timeline, and that maybe if he had to do, of course, dealing with the FDA back then was very different than it is now. It's definitely gotten smoother, but just thought I would share that anecdote. Hannah, anything you want to add to what Peter said?
Yeah, so I would say that we have had VCs who have been quite reassured by the fact that the companies that they're funding, or the pitches that they're hearing sometimes from companies, have already planned in companies like TTP to support in the development, because what they then see is a combination of often a young startup, a young team who may not have been through this before, with the market understanding and the energy and enthusiasm, coupled with a company that has been through these things before and that brings that level of experience. Having said that, I would say that most of the VCs I've spoken to in this regard are pretty hands-off, actually, in terms of how the companies that they're funding deliver on the goals that they set themselves. They care that they reach their milestones. They actually, in most cases, want to leave it to the founders and to the teams themselves to decide how to do that. So yes, I've spoken to VCs, but that they don't even often make introductions to some of the companies, because they want that to really be in the hands of the companies, and they don't want to be seen to be pushing them in one direction or the other. So
Understood.
Mostly neutral.
Understood. Andy, do you have any observations?
Yeah, I'm pretty deep in the weeds in the chip, right? So I'm pretty insulated from the VCs, but I think my opinion would be, just like it depends on who you're partnering with to help develop your system. It's how far up the learning curve are they? So I wouldn't personally, if I were had a company, I wouldn't want to work with a VC who had never done this before.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
The guys or girls who know it and have successes under their belt, I would imagine they're a huge asset. If somebody's trying it for the first time, I might run for the hills. Yeah. But that's about all. I don't have any firsthand experience.
Okay. I have one more question, and Hannah, we'll start with you, and then after this, we'll open it up to the audience. Let's say all three of you are phenomenally successful, and 15 different neuromodulation startups from this conference says, wow, we want to do business with you. Okay, that might be a little fictitious, but in general, when you have a neuromodulation firm that's chooses to do business with you, and now they may have a competitor, but another firm that's using similar hardware, how can you help them differentiate their product, or how do they differentiate their product from others, despite the fact that there might be similar components? Hannah, do you want to try that?
Yeah, so I guess there's kind of two different ways of looking at that. One is, are they going for a platform technology? And is the question, how do they differentiate themselves from other companies using the same platform technology? And maybe I'll leave that to these guys to talk about. I think in terms of, I guess, conflicts of interest maybe is part of what you're getting at there, or in terms
Not
of
necessarily conflict of interest.
differentiation.
It's just more about, all these firms. I mean, if you look at the big players, Nevro and Medtronic and Abbott, boy, any little competitive advantage they have, whether it's their battery can go, 10 minutes longer, or whether, they're able to be a little bit more precise in their localization, those become very important issues. And I'm not suggesting that every single application is going to be that competitive. In a lot of indication areas, you only have one player. But we're a maturing market. And as the industry matures, there's going to be more players in each indication, more competition. So that's why I asked the question. Andy, what thoughts do you have?
I think to a large extent, we're just the dumb hardware. You know what I mean? So usually the differentiation of a product is, what is the therapy? What is the anatomy? What is the approach? What is the user interface? All the stuff. And then the how in the world did we make it, maybe less important. There are some instances where they're like down into a circuit board or down into a chip where there's a unique approach that really was a competitive advantage, power savings, better noise, something like that. And when we work with our customers, usually the way that IP works is If there's something that we already had in our toolbox, it's ours, and they
Sure.
get a royalty-free license. If they had, like, let's say they came out of an institute that had some really great IP behind it, well, that's theirs, and we can implement it, and nobody else will ever know about it.
Got it.
And then there's a lot of gray areas in between where we are developing it for them, right? And if it's considered what we would say ordinary, right, just ordinary building blocks, no problem. That becomes usable, reusable IP. But if they can often target and carve out a handful of things that are just a really unique differentiator or competitive advantage, or just something that is unique. And we get into that discussion early on in the development that says, you know, this handful of things, really we need protection. It's usually not infinite. It's usually, you know, some number of years, some number of dollars, some level, you know, that they get protection of it. And yet someday we can, you know, leverage it for our other customers later.
So is it conceivable, you know, that Surtech people might be working in close contact with the CTO of one of your clients, where you might suggest, hey, if we were to modify the waveform a little bit, we can get more life out of the battery, or if we were to try this frequency instead of that frequency. Now, of course, that's the special sauce for many of these companies, but there's other attributes, there's other parameters that might not be as relevant as, you know, the target or the frequency or the duty cycle, right? Or even the size, right? For a lot of these vendors, it's, well, we need the smallest thing we can get, right? So there's obviously trade-offs. So it's not inconceivable that your folks would work with the CTO or the engineering folks at your clients.
For the customers, yeah. And actually, in all the years I've been doing it, probably the biggest differentiator between what I would call a successful project and a, let's say, less than successful project isn't us, it's them. So when the customer has somebody who really understands what we do, and has the, let's see, the knowledge and the authority to make the right decisions. It's real common to have the people with the knowledge and the people who make the decisions, and they don't speak the same language, and we're stuck in the middle. When you get those key people that really know what it is they're trying to do, what it is we do, and you can make good, solid decisions, that's usually the biggest litmus test for whether you're going to succeed or not. It's them, not us.
Okay, and Peter, would you like to respond to that?
I'm not good with the microphone today, sorry. Well, one of the takeaways from the last 2 days is how much innovation is going on in the electrode or the biological interface area. And as Andy said, we're just the dumb hardware, and IPG is an IPG, and that paradigm has been around for 30, 40, 50 years. So, you know, there's obviously continued innovation, but my feeling is the biological interface is where a lot of the differentiation and innovation is going to come. And my other point is, I think the gentleman from Motif was explaining, you know, we've got to get away from, as much as we like to exploit the current paradigm of an IPG and a lead, and you either do cardiac rhythm management or neuromodulation, there are all of these new bioelectronic innovations, both from hardware and therapy, that are really going to drive the innovation and the differentiation down the road. So I'm excited that we can be a part of that. And I guess being able to build on, again, lessons learned, you can at least help contribute to the success of the clients in getting their, you know, novel new therapy to the market.
Great. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience for our panelists. Do we have anyone on Zoom with a question? Good. All right. Anyone from the audience who'd like to ask a question of our panelists? Yes. Okay.
The comment, okay, because I've been thinking about this. So having been at both small and big companies, my attitude is don't outsource what's strategic and outsource what's not strategic. And so when it comes to manufacturing and components, they tend not to be strategic, so outsource that. And there's a lot of product development you can outsource because the contract development houses know how to go through the process and they have the machinery and the test methods and all that kind of stuff. Just really focus on what's super strategic, what is patentable. So for Motif, that may be very different than for a company that really has a new therapeutic clinical idea. So anyway, that's sort of my thinking to this, and I had super good experiences with outsourcing product development. The only other advice would be you have to have someone in-house who really understands what's going on. Otherwise, that that relationship is not going to go well. But I do have a question. So in other industries, people that do contract work will often take risk. So risk sharing, risk and reward sharing. I don't see that so much in our industry. I see mostly kind of this old paradigm. So I write a proposal and then you of course know it's going to take twice as long and be twice as expensive as you anticipated. So, given that for us, money and time to market is so important, is anyone going to go there to do some risk and reward sharing? So I'm just thinking, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis years ago, a bridge collapsed, right? For every day that bridge was finished earlier than planned, there was a massive paycheck that went to the contract, to the construction house. Are you thinking about? I can see a lot of conflicts of interest there, right? Because we still have to follow the rules and to get all the testing done. But is anyone going there? Sorry.
I could speak a little bit. First of all, it's not my job. I used to work at Cactus Semiconductor. We were acquired by Certec 4 years ago. So for 12 prior years, we were a really small team. And yes, we were much further up on the risk curve than we are at Certec. So I think to a large extent, it's how established and how stable the company is, and bigger and larger is more and more risk averse. Any of us who used to work at some of the biggies know that, right? But yeah, I would imagine if you can find product development houses, you got to thread the needle, right? Small enough to be a bit of a risk taker, smart enough to be nimble and fast and inexpensive, small enough, but large enough to actually be able to accomplish it. Tough needle to thread.
Yeah, I think historically what we've seen with our clients is that they want the long-term upside, and they want all of that pretty much to themselves, and therefore that they have preferred that option of kind of paying for the time that we put in up front. And often we're working on very challenging and quite risky projects where we don't know at the outset whether the thing that we've been challenged to design and develop, whether it's even possible to do, because sometimes we're really pushing on the boundaries of what's done before. And the business model that we most commonly work under allows us to take those technical risks and to really kind of push as hard as we can, and to kind of earn our revenues through that. And then in return, the long-term upside is all for our clients. It will be very interesting to see if that shifts over time. So we've seen quite a shift from working with the strategics in the past to increasingly working with startups and scale-ups over the last 10 years or so. So I think it will be very interesting to see if the needs of that market and those size players are different to the needs of the strategics, and whether we would consider different business models in order to facilitate that.
Okay. Peter?
I think, as you mentioned, Lothar, that traditionally contract design or contract manufacturing is viewed as a vendor, and we just pay you for what we want. We the customers retaining all of the IP and all the upside. So that's fine. If that's the way it's going to work, then you pay as you go and you get what you hopefully specify. For a startup to try and partner with a manufacturer, if one of us is going to be the long-term manufacturing partner, your operations department, then maybe there's a different model that, we're brought in as the long-term partner. We might share in the upfront cost of the development, but we certainly want to get both the long-term commitment and some of the upside of the payback in the long run. I don't know if the VCs are ever willing to share a penny with anybody else but themselves and one or two of the founders. So I think it's a great discussion point, and we should look at other models. But just like I was saying, we still think of an IPG as an IPG 50 years later. And contract manufacturing is, every year I got to cut more pennies off the cost of the thing, and it's always coming out of the vendor's pocket. So just got to be creative on what works for both sides.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you, panelists. We're out of time on this session. Sorry. This one, sorry. We're out of time on this session, but I want to say thank you to our panelists. It was an informative and enlightening discussion.